Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Be a volunteer at VA hospital. Vietnam vet comes in all the time as a total bro. Wears his medals on an old army jacket. In a Vietnam. Get taken POW. 6 months in a camp, daily torture. More POWs come in. Make plans for escape. One of the guards likes to sodomize POWs. Find a piece of barbed wire from cages. The guy goes in to get daily dose. Gets barbed wire wrapped around his neck and choked out. Take knife and pistol and rifle. Sneak to the makeshift armory, at least the hut they kept the extra guns in. Arm everyone. Guards patrolling and in the guard towers taken out. They light up the poorly constructed barracks with diesel fuel and cut down the hut with AKs and M16s. 2 Viet officers come running out and realize they are fucked. One officer literally gets a red-hot rifle barrel shoved up his ass. The other officer is skinned alive. They arm themselves with just about anything they can find. Make their way in a jungle carrying the wounded. 30 clicks later, they are approaching a fob. They are engaged from the rear. Mow down about 20 Viets. Guys at the fob open fire and accidentally kill 3 of the POWs. Start screaming USA friendly. Ceasefire. Guy gets a silver star and a purple heart. Would have got MOH, but before he got shipped back to America, got caught with weed. He re-upped his contract and went back to Vietnam until the occupation was over.
My old man goes to Vietnam as a pilot. Gets to his unit eager to get to flying. First day at his unit, he gets a check ride over the Agent Orange. They are shot down while clearing the base. The pilot giving him the check ride says it's not normally like that. Later, Pops is checked out to fly and glad to get to work, taking off like before. Probably the same asshole who shot him down before starts shooting at him again. 51 cal round comes through the bottom of the chopper and blows off his goddamn foot. He's freaked out and doesn't want to look at the bloody stump. Emergency landing at field hospital. Medics pull him out to look at his mangled foot. Turns out the round hit the bottom of the foot pedal and ricocheted off. The force drove the pedal into the bottom of his foot so hard he felt a sharp pain and then his foot went numb. Gets called a wuss and sent back to base. Even later, Pops is flying his Cobra, shooting nails at Charlie from 1,000 feet. LOL. What are you going to do about it, scrubs? Oh shit, that is a lot of DSHK fire. A couple of rounds come through the cockpit glass. There is a bright flash and suddenly he can't see. Wipes his eyes with his sleeve and there is blood. Still can't see. There's a lot of blood. His gunner turns around to see what happened. Gunner starts freaking out because Pops looks like he's had his face shot off. They do an emergency landing at a field hospital. Medics clean up the wound to get a look at it and stop the bleeding. It is literally just a cut on his forehead. Pops gets called a wuss and sent back. Even more later, Pops gets shot down again, this time in the middle of a goddamn firefight. He pulls out his trusty service sidearm. It's a fucking .38 revolver. The Loach gunner drops a sack full of AK-47s to him. He at least feels less stupid while he waits for pickup. Even more later than that, Pops gets shot down again. This time he's got a Car-15 and a bandolier of mags. Not this time, Charlie.
Uncle served in Vietnam. He said he just did drugs all day and called in airstrikes on nothing because the explosions apparently looked really cool when under the influence of whatever cocktail everyone was on. Only time he encountered the enemy, he got ambushed by 3 guys who shot him and then mag dumped him while he was lying on the ground. Somehow he survived and got sent back home. The day he left the hospital, he immediately got beaten up by some hippies.
It was the summer of 1972. The Vietnam War was in full swing, and things weren't exactly looking all peachy keen as far as my uncle was concerned. As was the way back then, my uncle and his team were given orders to hurry up and give support to a unit just inside the border of Cambodia, and away they went. The helicopter dropped them at the secondary landing area, about 5 miles from where the guys he was supposed to be going to pull out of the fire were located. The pilot was worried about flying into an ambush and was nervous about being in Cambodia. Their officer told them to hurry up, and they started making the best speed they could through the jungle. As they're moving, they start hearing the sounds of heavy weapons fire, .50s, M60s, and the weapons used by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army in counterpoint. They could hear the explosions, so they tried to make even better time while avoiding contact with the enemy. The first bodies they stumbled over were Viet Cong irregulars, a bunch of them around a machine gun. It looked like they'd been chopped up by machine gun fire. They went slower, keeping an eye out for any of the enemy. The next thing they found was a crashed helicopter. It had burned and was long cool. Still, the volume of fire was picking up, so they pressed forward, encountering more dead North Vietnamese soldiers and Viet Cong, all of them dead for a while. Their officer was convinced that the battle had been raging for several days. Everyone was nervous as shit as they pushed through the jungle, positive they were going to stumble on the North Vietnamese army or get shot by the guys manning the fire base. Just before they reached the kill zones around the outside fire points, the gunfire petered out. As they crossed the kill zone, they heard yelling in Vietnamese and English. The Vietnamese manning the eastern fire point were all dead, their position full of dead North Vietnamese. There was a machine gun turned inward on the base, and a dead North Vietnamese soldier was slumped over it. They hurried, keeping an eye out for anyone, but the place had gone silent. Their captain rushed them to the strong point in the middle of the fire base, positive that they were in time to save the men who would have fallen back to that last final position. They passed booby traps which had gone off and killed North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong alike, past the inner line of defense where men had died and were laying about, rotting in the summer sun. The main door to the final fortification was off the hinges, blown off by an RPG, and my uncle was the first inside, yelling out that he was American and there to reinforce them. There was no one but the dead inside, North Vietnamese, Viet Cong, and American alike. They'd managed to destroy the radio and other sensitive items, but had died to a man. According to my uncle, it got down to bayonets and knives. To my uncle's eyes, the last of the men fighting had died when someone had detonated a satchel charge toward the back of the bunker. They were too late, by minutes. Or at least that's what everyone thought, until one simple fact was pointed out. The men inside the bunker had been dead for days, bloated by the summer heat, eaten by insects and animals both. The fight had been over for days. Everyone had died. Both sides had wiped each other out to the last man. The team my uncle was on radioed back, asking if there was any fighting going on in the area. There wasn't. There wasn't another American presence for miles, but they'd heard the gunfire, the explosions, the yelling, as they'd hurried to reinforce the Americans and save them. Yet everyone had been dead for days.
Grandpa was beaten as a child and has some mental problems. Taken away from real parents at a very early age. Can't make it to college. His legal guardians didn't think he could amount to anything, so he enlists and goes to Vietnam. First 2 tours, he stayed in Saigon. His 3rd tour, he was stationed on a hill further north. He took part in ambushing a Viet Cong convoy. He helped line the road with M18 claymores. When the front of the convoy reaches the last claymore, the vehicles and everything in them are pulverized by hundreds of thousands of steel balls. He says the noise was the most terrifying thing he has ever heard. Afterwards, he decides that's his last tour. Not too long after he came back to America, he got the news that the hill he had been stationed on got mortared and pretty much razed to the ground.
The story of how my pop, granddad, got shot 3 times in one day. Pop Corporal, August 18th, 1966, in a Australian Army, in Annam, on patrol in a rubber plantation called Long Tan, on point for patrol. All of a sudden firefight. Viet Cong came out to play. Empties SLR, Strya version of FAL. Goes for the reload. Mid-reload gets a 7.62 to the right shoulder. Well shit.png, screaming in the middle of the fight. Finishes reload and has to shoot with recoil from SLR pumping his right shoulder. Fucking pain. Viet Cong keeps coming like true communist. It was like the opening scene of Enemy of the Gates. Pop. Artie gets called. It starts to rain. Fucking heavy rain. Later on. 105mm shells landing 200 meters in front of him. All of a sudden, massive pain in his knee. You have to be fucking me. JPEG, 7.62 in kneecap. Looks back to see how bad it is. Then pain in his right wrist. Another 7.62 cuts down the length of his forearm like a razor. Pulls out a bandage and wraps it around his left arm. Battle develops more. 105mm and two American 155mm dropping 50 meters to their front. 4 hours of fighting in this rubber plantation. Running low on ammo. 5 rounds left. 4 rounds left. 3 rounds left. All of a sudden, the Viet Cong start exploding. Turnaround APCs are rolling through firing 50s. Viet Cong leg it. Reinforcements have broken through. He gets medevaced. 5-hour surgery. Wakes up the next day and is informed that 108 Australians, New Zealanders stopped 2,500 Viet Cong with no air support. Some real Spartan shit right here. Only NCO left alive in the platoon. 22 Aussies and Kiwis dead. At least 500 Viet Cong. Couldn't tell more than that because most of the Viet Cong were vaporized by the artillery. Makes full recovery. 1971 joins Special Air Service Regiment. A true fucking Australian hero, and I'm related to him. My pop's 1972 tour with the Special Air Service Regiment. In a patrol. Overwatching the village to see what was happening. Lieutenant feels something weird about the village. Decides to scout it. Patrols into the village. Everything seems fine. Talking to locals. Seems like a nice, quiet village. Village elder comes to meet them. Village elder isn't wearing the black PJs. Elder is wearing a white and blue striped shirt and black PJ pants. He is wearing a fucking Soviet Navy shirt. Lieutenant asks him about it. Elder can't remember where he got it. All of a sudden, the lieutenant nods. My pop and 2 other blokes straight up abduct this guy. Bag overhead, hands tied, the lot. Take him back for interrogation. Apparently he got it off a friend who was trained by the Russians. Info gets scrambled up the chain of command fast. Really fucking fast. Nothing comes of it. We get intel that the Soviets were training the Viet Cong. We send it up top, even to the US command, and the only info we get back is that we are the last Special Air Service Regiment unit that will operate in Nam. The stupid Americans decided that they would pull out, so we had to as well. Pop. Few months later, Vietnam War ends. Pop lost 15 friends, but he got at least 32 Viet Cong and North Vietnamese. Feels bad, man. JPEG. Pop never forgave the US for that. Even to this day, he hates the US chain of command.
Uncle drafted for Vietnam. In Army boot promises brand new M16s in theater. Locals stole all M16s off the boats. Issued shitty World War II leftovers and M14s. Fuck that. His younger brother, my middle uncle, mails him his .357 and 12 gauge. Police action, so no mail checks. Still illegal, but who cares? No in-theater source of ammo. Uncle keeps mailing out all the .357 and 12 he can afford. 357 used by tunnel rats, often Uncle. Uncle carries .357 and 12 gauge for the whole war, mails them home. Think the sawed-off shotgun disappeared in a boating accident. Uncle was an asshole before Vietnam. Came back, still an asshole, just with PTSD. Eventually stops contacting all family, including his own mother. Fails to attend multiple weddings of middle uncle's children. Officially on shit list. Doesn't attend my wedding. Good, he's not invited. He hadn't seen his own mother for 10 years, including nursing care, hospital stays. Grandmother dies, never a peep from uncle on the matter. Has nothing to do with his own mother's funeral. If he shows up anywhere, he's gonna get his ass laid out.
I have some Vietnam stories from my grandfather. Grandfather is 101st Airborne, 2320 Arty, a Shao Valley at some base, forget the name. Pot shots are being taken at the guys after the mess hall. No one gets hurt, but it's annoying. This continues for a few days and people are finally getting tired of it. Grandfather and the others level the jungle where everyone thinks the shots are coming from. Levels it. Patrol goes out there to investigate. Grandpa goes with them to see if he got him. They find this old Vietnamese man in pieces. Near him is an old musket. Turns out this guy was taking pot shots with a musket. Intelligence figures out a few days later he was a local farmer pissed that an American soldier had killed his chicken or goat or something. Don't recall. Point is, the farmer was pissed and decided to take revenge. A happier quick story. Truck comes back from being out in the jungle. Bunch of brand new weapons on board. Grandpa and some other guys goes up to see what they got. Brand new crate of Chinese Tokarev pistols. Grandpa asks if he can have one. Shit, man, get a handful. There's enough for everyone. Gramps takes two, sold one, and still carries the other one to this day. No bring-back papers, sadly. He used his bring-back on an SKS and sent the Tokarev through the mail. Nobody checked back then. Just write free on your package where the stamps went. GIs couldn't get stamps over there, and send that shit home.
First story reminds me of one my dad told me. He was infantry, but at one point in the war got picked at random by some crazy-ass W-4 to be a gunner on his helicopter. Didn't ship anyone around, just flew over the jungle to attract fire for others to napalm the hell out of. Flying over a rice patch one day, they spot some woman walking around among water buffalo or something. She pulls out a AK-47 and starts taking pot shots at the helo. W-4. That crazy just shoot my bird, I'll fucking show her. Crazy-ass W-4 blows her and her water buffalo up with a missile and flies away laughing. Oh, and one more. They eventually got shot down. Crazy W-4 climbs out of the wreck, readies his sidearm and says, "Okay, boy, let's go get us another one." My father is shocked. Follows the crazy fucker through 3 miles of jungle in a march, back to get another goddamn helicopter and just go right back to it. Eventually, they get shot down. Again. Crazy. W-4 does same thing. My dad says, "You got it." My father is now crazy too. Crazy W-4 frowns at my dad and says he's not fun anymore and he'll find someone else's cherry to pop when they get back to camp.
Estranged grandfather on my dad's side was a sniper in Vietnam. Did and saw God only knows what. Came back with more loose screws than a hardware store. Decades go by. Gets into an intense argument with an uncle over a sandwich. Puts a bullet between his eyes at some stupid-ass distance. I think he went to his vehicle to grab his pistol. It's been years since I heard the story. WTF, I've never heard anything about him before. Web'em. Anon, we don't talk about him. What happened to him afterwards, Dad? Only time they ever talked about him. I just assume he got locked up or worse. But I wonder sometimes.
I've got one. Be me relatively new. Be welder working in a shop that makes oil field equipment. One supervisor, ugly, very nice, early 60s, named Steve. Wears hair a little long and always wears some type of badass ball cap. Awesome hats everywhere. This man is a hat man. Steve is about 25 pounds overweight but strong. Get new guy with bad fucking attitude. In case you didn't know, welding in a shop can be a serious dumping ground for fuck-ups and felons. I'll call him Buzz Douchebaggy. First day, and Buzz talking about military life and how he is a badass. Starts trying to throw his weight around and in general being a know-it-all dick. Can't weld undercut all over the place. Buzz messes up by not listening to directions. Steve calls him out on it and Buzz is acting like he's a badass. Buzz says, "Don't matter what you say, you were never a soldier and saw men die." Steve lights Marlboro and says, "That's so? I think you are a chicken shit who has to prove to himself he's a man by bragging and I was in Nam." Steve proceeds to take off work shirt showing wife beater and one arm has a green beret tattoo. Takes his hat off and brushes his hair back. Huge ass, but faint scar running temple to top of skull. Buzz, I was a Green Beret for 16 years and survived 2 helicopter crashes in Vietnam. The first time I was the only survivor and had to walk 3 days and ended up running across a North Vietnamese listening post and killing the 2 of them with my knife. The second time I woke up in the hospital after they pushed my skull back together. So Buzz, we're going to pretend we are back in the military. He looks him over and in a low voice says, "Attention." Buzz says, "Wah." Steve starts beating the shit out of this guy, hits him in the solar plexus, slaps across the face, forces him upright. Steve says, "I said, attention, you dick breath freak." Buzz comes to attention. "Now apologize for your shitty work. Shut up." Buzz says, "I'm sorry." Well, Steve cuts him off and he tries to comply with conflicting orders. Slaps Buzz again. Dude is cowed. That is, "I'm sorry, Sergeant, you stupid freak," and then gets in his face while poking him with a finger. "You poke R, poke fucking poke up poke. You want to go back to being a civilian, Buzz?" Buzz nods. "Good. Now go get a grinder and fix your shit up. Get with Anon to show you what you did wrong." Looks to me. "Hey, Anon, help old Buzz here out and get him straightened out." Me okay. Crew never had a problem with Buzz again. He became super friendly and Steve still walks around wearing awesome hats. Cool old dude.
Grandpa was an air traffic controller in USMC, served in Vietnam, told many stories. VC rocket attacks kept coming in from this village. Rockets killed some of Granddad's friends. Rockets blew Granddad's ATC tower out from under him. He jumped out as it collapsed and his back got BTFO. Granddad said that once, a Marine grabbed a gun, took the chaplain hostage, and demanded to be allowed to go home. Gunnery sergeant strolled over, put a .45 ball into the rogue Marine's forehead. The chaplain was pissed.
My uncle was in Nam. He was always super quiet about it around the family, other than talking about mundane shit like the food and the barracks and whatnot. When I was 15, I was at a party with family and friends, and that was one of the first times I ever got drunk. My uncle was there, 10 times more drunk than me. He sat down next to me at the campfire and started talking about his various experiences in combat, right out of the blue. Kinda what I expected to start. What adrenaline is like, what it's like to see your friends die and to have bullets and shrapnel whizzing past you. But then he started talking about killing. Said his first kill was some dumb kid with a Russian bolt action from World War II. Talked about seeing this little speck sprinting across a rice field and taking a few pot shots at it. Didn't realize he'd even killed someone till the next day. He said it feels incredible, like a second puberty. Talked about how you'll never know what you're capable of until you've killed another man trying to kill you. Said something along the lines of, "I used to question God's ways until I took a life. Then I understood." I don't think he was a psycho. He made it clear that combat is the rush, not was the killing. That entire conversation feels like a fever dream now. I was horrified as a teenager, but now I think about it with a bit more nuance. Wish I would have talked to him about it more. He died a year later. I was the only boy in the family for a while. The younger generation, I mean. He probably wanted to talk to a man my age about that shit for ages. At the time, I thought he was just pushing me to join the military, but now I realize he was probably just looking for some camaraderie.
Dad's Vietnam story. Be my father. Join Marine Corps because, fuck it, gonna get drafted anyway. Get sent to Vietnam, driving a Jeep down a supply route. Come to a river crossing. Pontoon bridge, wide enough for one lane of traffic. 10 minutes one way, 10 minutes the other way. See truck en route to DFAC, Chow Hall, full of pallets of beer. Tell a driver to stall on the bridge until the traffic swap. Just as the traffic swap is in our favor, steal beer truck and haul ass across bridge. Bro stalls truck at the foot of the pontoon bridge, buying 20-minute head start. Get to bivouac and borrow a nearby front-end loader. Friends help bury a pallet of beer and scurry away with the rest. Just as the front-end loader finishes patting down fresh dirt, MPs pull up. Everyone true, bro, no Blue Falcons. MPs recover the truck and all but one pallet of beer, but no suspects. A week later, throw party for everyone with the buried beer. Invite MPs.
Pop story, 1960s. Be Marine radio operator. Tell CO you want a rifle because fuck just having a .45. Qualify expert. M16 next day on a Jeep. Get to Nam. Small as country, the helo that dropped you off was flown by a kid you were in boot with. Shafted straight to FOB with unit. 4 a.m. patrol around the fence. Dead outside, not even anyone taking pot shots at the guards from a few hundred meters out. Gotta piss, have a smoke while you piss on a tree. Flashlight is off, but the moon is bright and full. Patrol buddy is loading a spare mag while you piss. See in a woods a couple VC. Tuck dick away and back away from woods. Take cover behind a couple sandbags. Call in movement on the southern border of the fence. Friendlies outside fence requesting assistance. Spotlights flare up and shine into the woods. Dad lobs a grenade as well as his buddy. Grenades go off and a hail of gunfire ensues. .50 is mowing down the tree line and a couple M60s are cleaning up the stumps. Ceasefire. No movement. Sunrise investigating damage. No one was hurt. The VC and the woods were all found dead. 10 total, no bullet wounds. My dad's grenade and his buddy's grenade killed them. Everything else was just wasted ammo. He said the only thing more exciting was when some kid tripped out on acid and bum rushed into a tunnel and wasn't seen until 2 weeks later, and he had 56 severed thumbs with him. From what my dad told me, the kid had got lost after he came down from his trip and ended up mapping a good portion of the tunnel system. And the 56 men he killed were all found in the tunnels, all missing thumbs. My dad said he hated being in the fucking tunnels. Well, this is how my dad had heard it and what he remembers from that night. A bunch of guys in a tent hanging out. One kid is breaking out some drugs, sold some pot and acid. Next day the unit is patrolling. Kid put the tabs he bought in his helmet. Forgot about them, sweating and mumbling. Said he tossed his pack and gun down for a breather. Someone finds a trapdoor for one of the tunnels they had been searching for. Kid supposedly just walked over with just his sidearm, a knife and a light, and the acid kicked in. He screamed, jumped in the hole, and into the darkness he went. I guess they had looked in the tunnels for a couple days but came up empty-handed. From what my dad said, the kid found an exit from the tunnels a few hundred yards from the fob.
Story I heard from an old buck, OB, teaching a radiation safety officer course. Be old buck, OB, Vietnam era. Join Navy to avoid Army. End up in nuclear power on subs. Squadron is scheduled for exercises to be attended by brass. Something hits the fan, exercises canceled. OB's sub stays pierside, reactor shutdown. OB is standing shutdown roving watch, SRW. Buddy is standing shutdown reactor operator, SRO. SRO technically owns the reactor plant, only subordinate to engineer and CO. SRW knocks on the maneuvering reactor control room door, requests to enter and report. SRO replies, enter. SRW notices a shit-eating grin on SRO's face, asks WTF he's so happy about. This time tomorrow I'm going to be a civilian. SRO tells OB about how 20 minutes earlier a man had come walking in a suit and tie. Admiral Hyman Rickover, the father of naval nuclear power and the head of naval reactors, hated wearing a uniform and was instantly recognizable, even in a suit. SRO turned to him and said, "Step back out and ask permission to enter." Rickover, "Son, do you know who I am?" SRO, "I don't care who you are. Step back out and ask permission to enter." Rickover, "Son, I'm going to ask you one last time. Do you know who I am?" SRO, "And I'm going to tell you one last time, get the hell out of my space or I'll call forward to security and have you thrown out." Rickover turns and leaves. OB finishes hearing this story, figures shit's about to hit the fan, and turns and leaves. 10 minutes later, footsteps. Many. Hides behind the turbine. COXO engineer Rickover and a relief SRO knock on the door, state entering as or with CO. A minute later, now former SRO departs with an entourage, a new SRO standing watch. Half hour later, former SRO returns by himself, looking crestfallen, enters maneuvering. Relief SRO goes back to bed. OB knocks on door, requests to enter maneuvering. "Dude, what the hell happened? That son of a bitch gave me a Navy Achievement Medal." Be on a carrier, Nam era. Ship is thoroughly damaged, sitting in another shipyard repair period. Several mechanical division sailors working on a turbine. Senior guy E6 is under turbine, uniform shirt off, pants covered in oil and shit. Brass comes through on a tour. Chief engineer, reactor officer, XO, Colorado, admiral, and secretary of the Navy. Be in a propulsion space, so no saluting, attention on deck. Horse shit. SecNav walks up to a stream of profanity emanating from the legs sticking out from under the turbine. "What exactly are you doing under there, son? I'm fucking a goddamned rubber duck. What the fuck does it look like I'm doing? Want to come down here and relieve the duck?" Brass all look shocked to death. SecNav, though, almost falls over laughing. Turns to his aide and says, "Write that one down for my memoirs." Brass all walk off. Guy finishes, gets out from under the turbine. "Who was that asshole?" "That was the Secretary of the Navy, Anon." "Bullshit." Announcing system comes on. Ceremonial bells ring. "Secretary of the Navy departing."
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.